Sometimes a PC game comes along that looks so incredible you would buy a new system just to play it. Let's chart that Mount Rushmore of graphically demanding PC games we all had to go out and buy new graphics cards for. Hello and welcome to ROG Global, where we celebrate PC gaming and do our best to help you enjoy it at its highest fidelity levels. But a great GPU like the ROG Strix 4090 OC Edition doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's only great because it makes games run faster and look nicer than ever before. Listen, all of which is to say, we wanted to raise a glass to the PC games over the years, over the decades, that decided to go all in on graphics. To show us something we'd never seen on our monitors before, minimum system requirements be damned. Join us on this journey back through time and set your GPU coolers to max because it's about to get choppy. Let's start then with the absolute worst thing that happened in 2020. You installed Cyberpunk and then it didn't run at a very high FPS. Okay, maybe that wasn't the worst thing about 2020. It did this because Night City is made of ray-traced surfaces. I mean, made of them, absolutely overflowing with them. It's like the architects saw a nightclub in northern England in the early 2000s with all its mirrored walls and light-up dance floors and decided, yes, this is our vision for a metropolis where techie-type crime is rife and where V's story takes place. It wasn't just the ray tracing that made Cyberpunk such a demanding PC game to run. There's a high population density in both interior and exterior spaces, and tons of individual light sources all casting their own shadows and interacting with each other. Cyberpunk came out before DLSS could generate extra frames, and when ray tracing was still a relatively new effect that not all graphics cards were capable of. And that meant that for many players, it took a couple of years to reveal the true beauty of this game and get it running at max specs and a high frame rate. But that's half the fun of PC gaming, isn't it? Today, a GPU like the ROG Strix RTX 4090 OC Edition can unlock incredible frame rates and make use of DLSS 3.5's frame generation features, so that Night City looks even better than it did in 2020. Let's continue back through time now, walking along the hall of graphically demanding PC game fame, if you will. 10 years before Cyberpunk, it was a little game called Metro 2033 that was stressing out graphics cards. What we'll see throughout this video is that shooters have traditionally flown the flag for groundbreaking graphics for decades, and Metro was a particularly grim, cold, atmospheric shooter. It was almost a horror game in moments, and it achieved that not just through those awful, horrible, hairy mutant enemies that it inflicted on you, but also its use of light and darkness. You always seem to be peering into the gloom by torchlight, and unfortunately for our frame rates, both the horrible hairs and the impressively gloomy lighting were very demanding on our graphical resources. It came with a benchmark tool which really let rip with maximum graphical effects on screen at once, and oh boy, if you could even get 15 frames per second in this benchmark within a couple of years after release, you had a machine that NASA probably wanted to borrow to launch space probes or something. We're into the 2000s now, and obviously we have to talk about Crysis. This is still the game most of us think about when we think about system requirements and upgrades and demanding PC titles, and it's absolutely justified in occupying that position. Crysis was a very silly release, because although technically there was hardware out there capable of rendering its DirectX 10 API features, real-time, large-scale physical destruction modeling, and the huge volume of post-processing effects it used like motion blur, depth of field, and chromatic aberration, well, Crytek went all in on this stuff. They didn't just want a game that looked cool when it was released in 2007, they wanted a game that would keep on looking cool for years afterwards. And as a result, it was legendarily hard to run for years afterwards. PC gamers like to future-proof their systems with bleeding-edge components. Crytek liked to future-proof its game with bleeding-edge graphical effects. Fair enough. Remasters of all 3 games in 2021 pushed the fidelity even further, so even now, Crysis 1 looks like $1 million.
Your signal's strong and clear. Looks like you're back online.
We're all the way back in 2005 now, and for once, we're not talking about a shooter. No, instead we're up in the rarefied air of Naughty's aviation sims. It's everyone's favourite flipbook, Microsoft Flight Simulator X. You can just go ahead and replace this with Flight Simulator 2020 if you like, because, well, for starters, just look at it, and like Flight Simulator X, a lot of the graphical demand comes from the fact that it's rendering so much scenery below in such high detail, while at the same time powering a physics engine that models tons of different variables from wind and weather to fuel burn. But let's stick with the older title because this is a journey back through time. And it's kind of amazing to imagine that it took a lot of players actual years to build a system capable of running this at high, smooth frame rates. Time makes a fool of us all, I guess. Now let's prepare for another leap back even further. Back in familiar territory, another shooter with their best graphics we'd ever seen at the time, Unreal, was absolutely mind-blowing in 1998. Look at those coloured lights, and the texture detail everywhere, and the reflective surfaces, and the polygons on that castle. The 90s was a real arms race in PC graphics, and for context, just a year before we had Quake 2 melting our minds and our PCs with similar leaps forward visually. But look at Quake 2, and then look at Unreal. You can see why it captured our imagination. Epic used its powerful game engine, wonder what happened to that, to tell a more immersive story than games had ever been previously capable of. It really grounded you on the alien planet of Napali, where your prison ship crash lands. It brings the flora to life. It makes characters out of the peaceful Gnarly and the fearsome Scourge. It wasn't just flashing graphics around for the sake of it, it moved the genre and the medium forwards. I really want to play it again. Let's take our final journey back through time first though, stay on task. Finally, here we are. Welcome to 1993, where the pixels you're looking at right now were the most exciting thing you could possibly put on a monitor screen. This, of course, is Doom. And although it would run on your kettle in 2024, when it was released, this was the most graphically demanding thing gamers had ever seen. Here's the system requirements taken from the game's original packaging in '93. An IBM-compatible 386 or better computer, 4 megabytes of RAM, a VGA graphics card, and a hard drive with 25 megabytes of space. Oh, sure, it's software, because we're all billionaires and we can all just afford to go out and buy 25 megabyte hard drives. But what choice did we have in '93? If this shopping list was all that stood between you and the most raucous, ultra-violent spectacle of shooter kind that gaming had ever seen, well, looks like we're going out and buying one of those newfangled VGA cards. Obviously, it was worth it. It was so worth it that it set a template for the next 3 decades, not just for FPS gaming, but for consumer behaviour. Doom was so good that we all went out and bought new PCs and bits and bobs for it, so when the next great shooter turned up, Quake, Quake 2, Unreal, Half-Life, Half-Life 2, you get it, we accepted that the new game was worth the new hardware. They pushed the fidelity ceiling even higher, so back here in 1993, among these giant, gory pixels, we've basically got Doom to thank for everything we hold dear. Cheers, guys. Right, back to the present day now, and this is the part where we ask you to like and subscribe and leave a comment, just familiar noises that ease you back into 2024. Thanks for watching, everyone. As always, shout out to the true homies who made it this far, and we'll catch you in another one.